Hey, everybody. Do you want to know how to make delicious, flavorful, yummy food that is good and good for you? Well, of course you do. Hey, y'all, it's Virginia Willis. Welcome to Cookbooks with Virginia. We're nearly every Friday, not all, but nearly every Friday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I get the interview cookbook authors and chefs and feature cookbooks that I am intrigued with or in love with or want to learn more about, because I figure if I want to learn about them, then you do too. And I am so honored and excited this week to have Dr. Linda Shiue and the author of Spicebox Kitchen. I saw her over on Instagram and we started a conversation because this is it, y'all. Food is medicine, and food is medicine. Food is medicine that can taste good, right? We don't want, who wants bad food and who wants nasty medicine? So we want that. So let's bring Linda in. Hey there, how are you doing today?
Good. Good morning, Virginia and everyone. It's so great to talk with you this morning.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to have you here. So for those, I know you from Instagram and your work, and your book is getting so many accolades. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much.
Will you tell the viewers a little bit about you and your history? And you're a doctor and a chef. Like, that seems like quite the mix up of careers, lady.
Yeah, I never follow the straight path, I guess I should say. So I guess the end of the story is not the end, the current state of the story is that I wrote this cookbook. But my story really started way before that. I grew up, I like to say, with a tasting spoon in my mouth. I love food. I was always eating. It doesn't mean that I wasn't a picky eater at some point, like all kids. But I think, I grew up as a daughter of immigrants from Taiwan in a small town in a semi-rural part of Long Island, New York. And so it was at a time when actually I didn't even have a house number on our street address. We were on a rural route. And in this small town, we were, at the time, the only Asian family, but I grew up eating my mother's Taiwanese food. And so that was one big influence. But I think even more important than that, actually, or equally important, was my parents worked as researchers at an international laboratory, or actually a national laboratory. And they were always visiting scientists from literally all around the world, countries that some of them don't exist anymore. There are some new countries they've converted, but people from all over the place. And my parents wonderfully would have these potlucks to host people, who were visiting and didn't have places to go around the holidays. And they would be these unintentionally international potlucks where people would bring food, sometimes from their own countries, but even more fun, sometimes from other countries, because they were so international. And a lot of these scientists would, spend time in different countries around the world. They would bring things that they found interesting. So I grew up with the exposure to really a crazy amount of different cultures and food. And while I didn't always like it, I always, tried it, or maybe I was told to try it. And I think that kind of imprinted my palate. So yeah, so that I feel really lucky for that. And I took my first cooking class, which was a French cooking class, when I was 7. And that was part of a summer program that was run by the public schools there. So I think I was really lucky as a kid to have all that.
Oh,
And
that's so wonderful.
it was amazing, right? And all of that said, I didn't think of it at the time as being my path. When I went to school, I was pre-med in college. I also studied anthropology. And I think that's also a very big part of my story, as an appreciation and a curiosity and an interest in other people and other cultures. And I studied abroad when I was a junior in college. So I lived in Singapore, which itself is a big, melting pot of a lot of different cultures. And, backpacked a little bit around Southeast Asia at that tender age of 19. And this is all kind of before internet, actually. So, I think all of this is actually really important to the backstory. And then, I got back along my path, went to medical school. But before that, too, I actually worked in a rural part of China without plumbing for 6 months.
Oh my.
So that was in Sichuan province in China, where
Ooh,
all those
yum.
chili peppers and the Sichuan
Yum.
peppercorn come
Yes.
from. And, I think, all of these were revelations, right? My taste buds just kept getting re-exposed to new flavors to me, new cultures, and really appreciating, going to local markets,
Uh-huh.
talking to locals about how they cook and eat. And I think all of that just kind of fed into the back of my brain
Yeah.
of like, this is a great way to eat. But I didn't think at the time that this is an important part of how to be a doctor.
Right.
So, right?
No, that's true. Let me just hold this book up because I want
Yeah.
everyone to see it. So y'all, you can go
Yeah.
to my Instagram feed and you're going to look for the cover of the book and you're going to follow the instructions. You're going to like me and you're going to like Linda. And y'all, I mean, many of the people watching this now, Linda, they know about my health journey. And I just think it's amazing because food really is medicine. And when you were talking about your exposure to the different cultures and the potlucks of your youth and traveling in China and that, I remember seeing a couple of years ago, and I love it. It was an expression like on a sign at a market in Dallas, Texas called Central Market, which is a really great grocery store. And it says, eat with your mind open, like,
I love it.
Yeah. And it's like,
Yeah.
I just think that that's so important to try all the things. So, okay. So you're eating, you're backpacking, you come back, you go to med school.
Yeah.
And then what?
And then I, was working nonstop and training with very little sleep for many years. So I think I kind of forgot about all of that. It didn't seem relevant to my day-to-day. And then I did what most people did. I started my practice as a primary care internist. And I did it kind of the standard way that all doctors do for many years, using the knowledge and training that I had from my medical school and residency. And then I got to a point around 10 years into that, and that's 10 years ago now, or a little more than 10 years actually, where I felt like, I don't know that I'm doing enough for my patients. And also I wasn't feeling that inspired. I was neither inspired nor inspiring. Like I felt like I got to the point where it wasn't necessarily easy, but it was almost like a formula. You see the patient, they tell you what they're there for. You often write a prescription. And I felt like, but my patients didn't feel good necessarily. Often I felt like I was treating to the numbers, whether that's weight or blood pressure or blood sugar, cholesterol tests. And even if those numbers got better, patients didn't always feel better. And I felt like I'm a very creative person by nature, very curious. I didn't feel that. And then I thought, maybe I don't need to feel that in my professional role. That's for fun, right? And so I started a food blog, and that started because at that time, Francis Lam was at salon.com, and he did this 1-year salon kitchen challenge where weekly he would pose an ingredient, a question, a story, whatever it was. And the challenge was, answer that challenge with your recipe and a story behind it. And I was one of 2 people who entered every week, which tells you a lot about my personality. The other person is now someone I've kept in touch with since way back then. That was like 2009 or 2010. Lucy Mercer in Atlanta, Georgia, where you are.
Yeah, that's awesome.
The 2 of us entered every week, and the prize was really if you got chosen, you got to be published in Salon, and that was a great joy. So that was kind of my side thing. That was my hobby, something I actually really looked forward to every week. And then a little bit after that, actually, I was very lucky in that I found out about a continuing medical education course or CME course called Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives, which I have since this year become on the faculty of many years later.
That's
and
wonderful.
It was amazing. It was really like all these things happening at the right time. It's this conference that is co-sponsored by the Harvard School of Public Health and the Culinary Institute of America. So kind of the best of nutrition, the best of cooking schools. And at this conference, they went over all the nutrition science, which was really a lot of information I honestly didn't learn in medical school or residency. But importantly, also cooking classes and tastings and demonstrations of healthy food that was completely delicious. And that was literally that mythical light bulb moment. I was like, oh, this is it. This is what I need to help my patients more. And this is that creative link that I have been looking for that will make me more inspired and inspiring as a doctor. And so that's what started it.
That's just amazing. And I think that's so wonderful. Y'all, so I was also sharing with Linda before we started about, I have a friend that is having some gastrointestinal problems. And, you know, she went to the doctor and the doctor didn't ask her about what she was eating, which I find to be just unfathomable. But it's like there is sort of like so much conventional medicine, it seems, it's just like it reduces people to numbers, you know, and, you know, you're treating the blood, not the human carrying the blood. Right. And then I think it gets so, don't you think it really gets so daunting for people too? Like, well, you're 50 pounds overweight and your cholesterol is high and your heart's beating too fast and people get overwhelmed and then they just, you know, reach for the Big Mac again.
Oh, yeah. I mean, everybody eats comfort food. No one is a perfect eater. I'm not a perfect eater. You know, and I also think that it's not helpful to say that, to demonize any one food. I don't think you should ever say you should never, ever eat that, because that's when people start craving those things, right? It's like when you tell a kid, don't do that, that's what they're going to do right away. And
I mean, it's just human nature, right?
It's human nature.
It's moderation.
Yeah, I love that story though, because, you know, I'm certainly guilty of having done that as a doctor too, because I think that as whatever your profession is, when you're trained as a professional, I think there's a tendency to say, oh, if I wasn't trained to do that, that's not really what I'm supposed to do. And so if you go back though to like, what did your mother tell you? What did your grandmother tell you? Actually, it probably was, let's cook something, eat your vegetables, something as simple as that. It is not brain surgery. It's not rocket science. It actually is going back to the basics. And something that any good doctor will do is actually keep in mind that the answer actually lies with the patient. Right? We're all humans. And I can't read anyone's mind. And I may not get the answer out of you if I don't ask you. So I think that, like what you're saying with your friend, asking that most basic of questions. So what do you eat? That often gives me the clues and, importantly, helps the patient find their own path to getting healthier.
That's fantastic. So we have a question, and this is a dear friend of mine from college who is actually a medical professional as well. She's a nurse anesthetist. So I just think this is awesome that Carol, that you're asking this. So totally on board with what Dr. Shiue is saying, but where does one first begin? What's the first step for a person who maybe feels too far gone?
Yeah, so that goes back to your statement about people feeling overwhelmed. I think it starts with one bite. You know, every bite counts is something that I like to say.
Yeah,
because I think a lot of people feel it's all or none. So they go from eating fast food every day to saying, okay, I have heard that I have to basically be a vegan or else I'm not going to get healthy. Right. And while that might be where they end up going and what they need to have, you know, quote unquote, perfect health, for most people, not for some people are all or none about things, but I think for most people, it has to be a gradual change. And it has to be starting with adding the good stuff. So let's say someone wants to eat their Big Macs and to say that, no, you can never have that again. You know, that's not good for you. How about say something like, okay, what fruits or vegetables do you like? Right. And if you like any of those, how about adding one of those to what you're eating today? And you can still have, maybe don't quote this out of context. You can but really starting slow like that, adding a little bit at a time, and gradually. And we were talking about this before we started. People's taste buds change, whether it's in big ways or small ways. You know, I actually love the challenge of someone who comes to me and says, I hate vegetables. I've never liked vegetables. My mother's been trying to get me to eat vegetables my whole life. I will never like them. And then I'll say, well, you know, what flavors do you like? What textures do you like? Maybe I can show you a way to make the vegetable that might most fit into that and show you a different way of cooking it. Maybe it's a different technique. You know, for example, like let's say it's mushrooms, right? That's a meaty kind of vegetable.
Yes.
But if you don't cook them right, if the texture might be off-putting for people. And so for that, the simplest thing I might say is, you know, let me teach you how to sear mushrooms. You can do this. If you have a heat
Right.
source and a frying pan. Turn that heat up all the way, stick those mushrooms on, don't crowd them, and then suddenly you've got this texture that you might like, and that'll bring out a totally different flavor profile.
And well, it's so obvious with your food is all about flavor, and it's flavor from all over, which I love, right? Like we are so fortunate now. I mean, I got harissa last week at my local Publix, right? Like just the Joe Normal grocery store. Nothing, it's on the same aisle with like authentic jerk seasonings and and it's just our world is now our regular grocery stores. We have like the world's refrigerator, the world's pantry, like basically at our fingertips. And it's wonderful, y'all. So you've got like just tons of different recipes and inspiration. A Filipino vegetable, Filipino vegetable stew, stir-fried squid. Oh my God, look how delicious that looks.
Thank you.
So, and this. Oh, yeah. There we go.
Thank you. Yes, that's like kimchi jjigae. And I do want to give a shout out to my photography team. So Michelle came in with my photographer and my culinary school classmate. And I didn't mention culinary school yet in my story, Haley Hazel. So like after I went to that conference, I started cooking classes, teaching cooking classes. And then about 5 years into that journey, I actually took a year off from working as a doctor to go to culinary school because I wanted to learn two things. One was to be the best cooking teacher I could be. I'd already been teaching, but there's definitely a skill in teaching. And so I wanted to learn from good teachers to be a better teacher. And I also wanted to learn how to flavor it better. So this is all about flavor, right? So those pictures make the food all look beautiful. And hopefully that's not daunting to people. I actually think that produce is, beautiful. It's a perfect photography subject because it's so colorful. And flavor, if you use spices, and I think we are living in a wonderful time where things are pretty accessible to people, if not in their hometowns, through the internet. You can get pretty much anything, and that wasn't true when I was growing up in my small rural town. We had to improvise, but now most people can get most things, and I think that's really lucky, and I think it just opens up a whole world of flavor. So yes,
who wouldn't want to eat that, right? I mean, it's
exactly
a mushroom burger, and that looks just so amazing. That's the thing, right? It just if food tastes good, like always my godchild Ruby, when she was a little girl, there was the one bite rule, like you had to taste it. And she was the daughter of two chefs. So but this is quote unquote health food. Sign me up. Right?
Exactly. So that picture, actually, I'll talk about a little bit, is an example of small steps of things that you might already like in a healthier direction. So those are, green chilaquiles verdes. And, you can make them with the usual fried nacho chips. But with that, I have an option of make your own, bake your tortilla chips out of tortillas. You'll be using less oil. It's not deep fried. And then you're making your salsa from scratch, and therefore, reducing the amount of salt that you might have. And those are the kinds of things that people can do to go from something they think maybe that's not so good for me to, I still like this. It's the same dish, but I'm actually taking steps to make it a little bit better.
That is, oh gosh, preach, lady. I am so, and we're going to make it, this is going to become a weekly show, the two of us. Have you preach about this? Because I think like people, you're right. It's like all or nothing, or I'm going to go from eating like fatty, fat, and salt to going, oil-free vegan in a week. And willpower just doesn't work. And what you've done in this beautiful book, and so y'all, I want you to go to my Instagram feed. Please sign up. And you really have been getting so many accolades, because I think who doesn't want this? Look at that dish, y'all.
That's one of my favorite pictures too. Yeah. It's just a salad, but it has a lot of color, a lot of different textures, and a lot of flavor, right? So that's the key. Healthy food can and has to taste good, right? So most of us can follow a very strict regimen that we don't like for a week, maybe 2 weeks, and that's it. That's true for all of us. And I actually grew up with, a babysitter who was on a different diet every week. And I remember looking at what she was eating and thinking, what is that? Like, it was all kind of colorless. It had no texture. It didn't work for her, and she wasn't happy eating it. And if food isn't joyful, it's not going to work for us. And so I really think if I had to sum up my cookbook in one theme, it's hard to, I'll give myself a few themes. Food is delicious. Food connects us to other people and other cultures. And there is not one healthy diet. I think that's another mistake that a lot of people make. And, maybe my mistake, I always like to joke that if I pretended that there was one healthy diet and wrote that kind of diet of the week, I could make millions, right? But I don't think that's true. It has to be, hi, Jonathan. It has to be what works for people.
Yeah.
And there, every culture has a healthy diet. I think that's a very important message I want to get out there.
No, this is true. Okay, Jimmy's here. I love cooking from scratch so you control what you're eating, even if it's a sometimes food. It can be a healthier option than prepackaged. That is certainly the truth. And I think, oh gosh, this looks so good. Endive leaves with a harissa carrot yogurt. That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see what time it is. I'm just talking. So you have, I showed the picture. I want this for supper. That's why I keep going.
Yes, that's that roasted cauliflower steak, which was a trend a few years ago with Romesco sauce.
Well, I'm still on that trend.
I know. So it's the idea of simple things that have complex flavors. So most of these recipes are really meant for weeknight cooking, 30 to 60 minutes. So like all of you, I'm busy and I don't want to be overwhelmed when I come home from work, but I want to eat something that will make me happy and will make me feel good also.
Oh my gosh, this looks so good. The Koresh vegetable.
Yes. Yes.
How do you say it?
Yes, pheasant June. I often say it wrong too.
Okay.
And so, yes, that is
a pomegranate.
Yes, so that is, and this one, it's usually made with poultry, but butternut squash is often added. And so I wanted to make this a vegetable forward example of that. And it has such interesting flavors, from basically a slow cooking of walnuts until they release all their natural oils into the sauce and make the sauce, with a lot of spices, and then with vegetables and the tartness of pomegranate molasses.
That's fantastic. Makes me, I'm already thinking, I wonder if you could do that with pecans.
You could. I have a friend who lives in the South and they have pecans there and they do it with that. So yes.
Yay, that's so nice. Well, you have kindly prepared a little demonstration for us.
Yes.
Will you share it?
For sure. So this is going to be a really quick demo. And I'm going to show you how to make it and a few ways and how to enjoy what we're making, which are orange spice pepitos, one of the quick recipes from the book. And the reason for this is it's an example of how people can add seeds and nuts to their diets, because they're really good for you with heart-healthy monounsaturated fats. And they're good snack food, and they add texture and flavor. And it's a really easy way of using spices that I bet you most of you already have in your pantries, cinnamon and cayenne. All right, so I'm just heating a little bit of canola oil in a pan, and I have some raw pumpkin seeds or green pepitas here. You could substitute other seeds or nuts if you have. Just make sure that they're raw. And one other kind of cooking lesson from this is to toast your seeds and nuts to get that flavor and that crunch. You're going to bring out all the nuttiness or the nice seed flavor in addition to the crunchiness. So all of that is important when we, eat something. You want to have all of that. And when we toast these, they're going to change in color, puff up a little bit. They might start popping. So I'm going to watch it a little bit. And I'm just coating them in a little bit of oil so that they can cling to the spices that we're going to add. So if you were just toasting these alone, you don't need to use any oil. But for the spice blend, you do need to add something to stick to it. So very simple. We have some cayenne pepper. I'm going to add that to my little bowl here. A little bit of cinnamon.
Mm-hmm.
And a tiny bit of sugar. So you notice I do use sugar. I do use salt, and I do use fat in my cooking, but just the right amount, not too much. And often use mainly spices to bring out most of the flavor. It's more interesting. So I'm just stirring those 4 ingredients together. And that's going to go into our pepitas after they're a little bit more toasted. This will take just about 5 minutes to make. And you'll see that they're getting glossy from that small amount of oil I put in, just a teaspoon in the pan. And they're starting to change in color from that green to more of a light brown, golden color. And in a second, you may hear them start to pop. I want you to have that whole snap, crackle, pop effect.
Oh no, I'm so excited. I feel like I can smell it. All right, you've got Carol's attention, so this is wonderful.
All right,
she's found.
Oh wait, you hear that popping? I want people to hear.
I did hear it.
Go ahead. Let's take a look at this question.
All right, is it difficult finding time to cook healthily with your busy schedule? Well, I know what's healthy and appreciate good food. It seems convenience is often my enemy. That's a great question, because I know that I make the worst eating decisions when I'm not prepared, right?
Yeah.
And so part of that for me is making sure that I have predominantly healthy foods in the house, and I limit my more indulgent foods. But it can take time to eat healthy. There's no doubt about it. It's super easy to drive through that drive-through, right?
I think that's the number one reason why people don't cook more often and don't cook what they consider healthy food more often. So I do think planning is everything. So part of my plan is once a week, I plan out 4 to 5 dinners for the week.
Okay.
And make my grocery list and try to use as many of the same, at least produce, fresh items as possible in multiple dishes so that you're not wasting and it's not such a long list. And that way I get most of what I need in one grocery trip, because that adds a lot of time if you have to keep going to the grocery. And then I have my plan, and then I will, my suggestions for people are either to batch cook, which is, maybe making large amounts of certain things. That might be roasting a big sheet pan of vegetables, preparing maybe a bunch of sauces. And I do have a pantry section in each section of the book of healthy sauces for flavor. And then, having your plan and your schedule so that you really are ready to go when you come home from work. Maybe some things that take longer are pre-cooked, like your sauces or your roasted vegetables. And then other things, you just kind of put it all together as you come home from work so that it doesn't take a long time. So it's really all the planning out the meals, planning out your groceries and having them. And then pre-cooking things that might take longer when you have more time on the weekend. All right, so I'm going to add my spices now.
Okay.
So I've just added, sorry, I didn't hold that up. So I've added that spice mixture of cinnamon, cayenne, a little bit of salt and pepper. And I'm going to take off the heat and just make sure that I'm thoroughly coating all of those. And then this is the most important part, is some orange zest at the very end.
Oh, how nice.
So that adds just that brightness that brings in all these flavors together. This was actually inspired by, I think it was actually a compound butter at El Naranjo restaurant, formerly in Oaxaca, and now in Austin, Texas, from Chef Ileana de la Vega.
Who was nominated for us. She's a semifinalist for the award. I think she's amazing.
And a lovely woman. And I took a cooking class from her when I went to Oaxaca sometime in the late 90s. It was actually the last year that she had her restaurant in Oaxaca. And I remember that she had this compound butter at her restaurant that had chilies in it, that had orange in it. And I don't remember what else it had, but this was inspired by that. And also by Café de Olla, which I have a recipe for in the book too, which is Mexican style coffee that's brewed with cinnamon and orange rind. And it's just really delicious. So when I eat something or when I travel somewhere, I remember it's in the back of my mind, and then I use it in other ways. So that is where this flavor inspiration came from. So you can eat this alone. So again, cinnamon, cayenne, orange zest, that's the main flavors in this. Or you can use it in other ways because this is a good snack food. I have some that I pre-prepared that I'm going to show you how you might enjoy it. So I have a bowl of butternut squash soup here. And, some people don't like purees. It's kind of like baby food. It's smooth, doesn't have texture. I always add a little garnish of these to this butternut squash soup. It's kind of the whole squash I do. We have, butternut squash like a pumpkin, and pumpkin seeds. And this adds a little bit more spice and crunch. So that's one way that you can use these pepitas. And you can also use them to make a trail mix. So maybe add some pepitas add some other nuts. Here, I'm going to add some raw cashews, but you can use whatever nuts you have or what you like. I'm going to add some golden raisins.
Ah, yum.
And some dark chocolate chips. So like I said, there is room for a little bit of indulgence. The chocolate, dark chocolate especially, has lots of antioxidants and not as much sugar as milk chocolate. And so there's your homemade trail mix, something to snack on. And again, the idea that if you cook it at home, you have control over your ingredients. You know what's going into it. But, you know, for people who are watching their calories or whatever they're watching, make sure you do watch your portions. So I wouldn't say have a huge bowl and just kind of eat it mindlessly while you're watching TV. Put the right amount that you think is correct for you and just have that. You know, small little things like that will get you where you want to go. And it's really simple. As you can see, I could talk and demonstrate that in 5 minutes. You can do this too.
Oh, Linda, you are so awesome. I can't stand it. So we've got all this stuff. You're
Thank you, Carol.
What an incredible cookbook.
Thank you.
One question here. Any type of pan or cast iron for your skillet? Do you
for this anything?
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah.
Basically all of the I hardly use any special equipment because I think, you know, I don't want people to have that as a barrier. Any basic kitchen can help you cook all the recipes in this book. And I also actually have a pantry stocking and equipment list in the beginning as well.
Oh my goodness. I am so grateful for you being a guest today. I love your book. I love your message. I'm beyond impressed that you're a doctor and a cook. I just think that that's great because, you know, so often it's like, take this pill or take this medicine. And I know I'm like living, breathing proof right
you
here.
Are. Yes.
Take care of your body and eat good food. You know, it doesn't have to be. So y'all, and just so many great photographs. So Linda, thank you so much for being a guest on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me, Virginia. It's been such a pleasure.
Yes, it has. So I'm gonna, folks can go to your blog, which is Spicebox Travels, to learn more about you. And congratulations once again.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody.
Okay. Bye-bye. Y'all, isn't that wonderful? I'm so excited. I feel like my cheeks hurt from smiling so much. Eat well and be healthy with globally inspired vegetable forward recipes. It's the UN in this book, man. It's just a little bit of everything and just so many. Oh, I just saw some okra and tomatoes. It's one of my favorite things. So thank you so much for watching. Please head over to my Instagram feed. Look for the cover of this book. Follow me, follow Linda, and follow her anyway, because she's just got such great recipes and message. Thank y'all so much for watching. We've got some great guests coming up. Have a great weekend and bon appetit, y'all. All right. Bye-bye now.